Today's case is a very, very creepy one. On July 19th, 2016, Sierah Joughin and her boyfriend Josh Kolosinski were on a summer bike ride through the serene country roads of Metamora, Ohio. At only 20 years old, the couple had already been together for 7 years, and they were the true picture-perfect high school sweetheart couple. Sierah had recently purchased a second-hand purple bicycle from a garage sale. She really wanted to show it to her boyfriend Josh, and the 7-mile ride to his house would be a great way to test it out and to get some good exercise. So that afternoon, she surprised him at his house, and they spent some time together before she wanted to head back home. Josh took the opportunity to drive his motorcycle, and he rode alongside Sierah on her bike. They were both surrounded by cornfields on both sides of the road as far as the eye could see. Along the way, Josh took some Snapchat videos of them goofing off and just goofing around together while on their ride. With less than a mile left to her house, Sierah stopped to tell him that he could go ahead and turn back and that she could make it the rest of the way alone. Josh was hesitant to let her go by herself, but ultimately she convinced him that she would be fine. She was already so close, it would probably only take 10 more minutes at most for her to get home. If it were going to take longer, Josh would have insisted that he stay on the ride. So Sierah and Josh kissed goodbye, and he watched her ride away for a minute before turning his motorcycle around. The image of Sierah pedaling off into the sunset alone would be one that haunted Josh forever. Neither of them had any reason to think that their hometown roads were unsafe, and neither of them could have known that on this particular night, there was someone hiding in the cornfield. Hey guys, I'm Elise. This is 10 to Life. Let's dive right in. Sierah Catherine Joughin was born on February 11, 1996 in Sylvania, Ohio. She was born to parents Sheila Vakulik and Tom Joughin. Her loved ones affectionately referred to her as C, and she was one of 5 siblings in their blended family. Tom had one daughter from a previous relationship named Kayla. Tom and Sheila had Sierra, and then they both went on to marry other people. Tom and his wife Darcy had a son together named Carson, and Sheila would remarry a man named Matt, and they would have 2 children together named Ava and Hunter. Sierra was very close to her entire family, including her step-parents, half-brothers and sisters, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. Her family has said that she valued quality time with her loved ones and really loved family traditions. She was said to have just a vibrant, funny, and infectious personality, and there really wasn't a single person who had a problem with Sierra. She had a close group of friends that she knew since childhood, and she was just someone that people gravitated toward. She was said to have always had a natural confidence about her as well. Not like someone who was conceited, she was just really comfortable with herself, comfortable in her own skin, which is something that a lot of girls and young women struggle with. And let's be honest, a lot of adult women struggle with it too. Sierra was very athletic as well, and she played volleyball in high school and intramural volleyball in college. She loved working out and even worked at a bar studio part-time during school. She was also very, very serious about academics and was a member of the National Honor Society. She loved horses, loved to travel, and she just had a very adventurous and outgoing spirit. From a very young age, Sierra was especially close to her maternal aunt Tara and Tara's husband Howard. They have 4 children, Nathan and Nick, who are closer in age to Sierra, and Aaliyah and Shyla, who became like siblings to Sierra as well. Tara and Howard would include Sierra in almost all of their family activities, their vacations, and they were really like a second set of parents to her. I can imagine that after her parents, Tom and Sheila, broke up, remarried, and started new families, it could have made Sierra feel a little left out at times, or like she didn't quite know where she belonged. Now, don't get me wrong, it's obvious that she was really close to all of her family, but there must have been a specific reason that she was so close to Tara and Howard. It seemed like she just fit right in there with them, and they have both said that even as a little girl, they prioritized Sierra's schedule to make sure that they could include her and be with her as much as possible. Her cousin Nick is actually the one who introduced Sierra and her future high school sweetheart Josh, because Nick and Josh were good friends growing up. So even though Sierra and Josh didn't start dating, quote-unquote dating, until middle school, they knew each other since they were very young kids. A lot of times people assume that young love never lasts, or like your first relationship isn't going to be the person that you marry. In many middle school and high school relationships, there's a lot of breaking up, getting back together, breaking up again, a lot of heartbreak, jealousy, and just general drama. And that's to be expected. I mean, at 13, heck, even into young adulthood, most people aren't ready to settle down and commit themselves to one single person. If you think about it, most of us aren't remotely the same person that we were back in grade school, so how could you possibly know who you would want as a partner? However, that wasn't really true for Josh and Sierra. From the puppy love stage and on, that was just it for them. They were in it for the long haul. They were said to be one of those couples where you just knew if you saw one, the other would be close by. They definitely weren't one of those on-again, off-again couples, and as they grew up alongside each other, they grew more and more in love with each other. At Evergreen High School, they experienced every single dance together, homecoming, prom, even graduation, everything. All of the big milestones, they did it together. Even through college, which is arguably one of the most trying times of a long-term relationship, especially if you don't go to the same school, they stayed strong and they stayed together through everything and stayed happy. After high school, Sierra attended the University of Toledo, and she was a student in the College and Business and Innovation area. She was studying human resource management, and in the fall of 2016, she would have been entering her junior year. Sierra's uncle Howard, Aunt Tara's husband, owned a very successful metal manufacturing supplier company called ICE Industries. And during college, Sierra had been doing a human resources internship at his company, and after graduation, she planned to start her career in the family business. In the summer before her junior year, Sierra moved in with her grandparents, who lived right down the street from her mother in her hometown of Metamora. Metamora is a very small town in Fulton County, Ohio, with a population of less than 600 people. You can see just how rural it is, consisting primarily of farmland with a house sprinkled in here and there. It's been said that in Metamora, you had to create your own fun. And in the summer, the family would get together and do things like barbecues and bonfires and anything they could do outdoors. Even though Sierra had enjoyed the college experience her freshman year, she had decided that she wanted to complete her degree online and do that from home so that she could be closer to Josh, but also so she could focus more on her future career at her uncle's company. She was actually planning on moving in with Howard and Tara in the fall. Sierra and Josh had been talking a lot about marriage lately and had even been looking at rings together. However, Sierra really wanted to finish college first before they got married. That way, she wouldn't be trying to focus on school while also planning a wedding. Plus, they'd already been together for 7 years at this point, lived together during freshman year of college, on and off, and knew what their future held together. So, what was the rush? During the summer break before her junior year, Sierra wouldn't be working at the bar studio like she was while in Toledo, and she wanted to find other ways to remain active and remain in shape. So that's when she found that purple bicycle at a garage sale, and she was super excited by this. She and Josh already loved to do adventurous outdoor activities together, like skiing, hiking, and even skydiving, as scary as that is. So getting a bicycle made a good addition to their outdoor activities, even though Josh was more of a motorcycle kind of guy. July 19th, 2016 was a Tuesday, and the week prior, Sierra's family had been on vacation. She hadn't even finished fully unpacking before she decided to head over to Josh's house and show him her new bike. Sheila has said that she planned on talking to Sierra about a study abroad program for a future semester, but she told her mom that they would just talk about it later and rushed out of the house to go see Josh. At around 5 p.m., she left on her bike to make the 7-mile ride to Josh's house. In no way whatsoever did Sierra being unsafe ever cross her mother Sheila's mind. After watching her daughter disappear down the long, cornstalk-lined road, She left in her car for some night classes that she was taking in town. When Sierah arrived at Josh's house, she excitedly told him, "Look, it's my new workout. Look at my new bike," like just so excited. Now, Josh was supposed to hang out with a friend that night, and Sierah didn't want to be out late. So they only hung out for a little bit before she and Josh took off with her bike and his motorcycle. Josh drove relatively slow so that he could coast alongside her and they could take in the scenery of the cornfields during golden hour before the sunset fully went down. After making their silly Snapchat videos and goofing around together, like I said before, Josh was a little apprehensive about letting Sierah ride alone the rest of the way. Her family has said that she was always super independent, and really, half a mile on a bike wouldn't have taken her really any time at all to get home. Honestly, him wanting to drive with her the whole way was probably more of a gentlemanly gesture than actual concern for her safety. They've lived in that town practically their entire lives. Everybody knows everybody, and bad things happening to people you know just was not a common occurrence. So before they parted ways, they gave each other their standard kiss goodbye. Had Josh known that that kiss may have been their last, he might have made it more than just a customary little peck. However, the sweet familiarity of their goodbye routine was just as unforgettable, if not more. After the sound of Josh's motorcycle got further and further away, the only thing Sierah could hear besides the hum of her bike was the rustling of the cornfields beside her. A few minutes later, she heard what sounded like a motorcycle approaching from the distance, and she probably wondered why Josh had turned back around. However, she realized it wasn't actually Josh when a different motorcycle passed by her on the narrow road. When Josh got to his house, he expected for Sierra to text him soon to let him know that she had gotten home safely. But before he could worry about it too much, his friend showed up, and he figured that he would just talk to her later. He texted her that he was home, but when he didn't get a reply, he thought that she probably just got into the shower or was putting away clothes from her trip because she hadn't fully unpacked yet, and he didn't worry too much about it. While he was hanging out with his friend, he tried to text her a couple of more times, and still didn't get a response. Then at 9 p.m., Sierra's mother Sheila returned home from her night classes that she was taking in town, and she noticed that Sierra's bedroom light wasn't on, which was a little unusual because she could usually see the glow from her bedroom on the second floor when she drove up to the house. It was a little early for her to be in bed and asleep with the lights off, but Sheila didn't think to immediately go and check on her 20-year-old daughter. She could have also still been at Josh's house, or have decided to just spend the night over there. It wasn't until 10:30 p.m. that she became very worried. Her heart sank when she got a call from Josh, who was in bed but wanted to know if she had heard from Sierra. He told Sheila that he had been trying to get in contact with her for hours, but that she wasn't answering her phone. He told her that she set off by herself around 6:45 p.m. after telling him that she could make it the rest of the way home on her own. Both of them knew in that moment that something was very, very wrong. Josh quickly got out of bed, jumped in his car, and sped as fast as he could to Sierra's house. Where they lived, farmers would often be driving with heavy equipment, and semi-trucks carrying huge loads would take up the majority of the narrow roads when they were out making deliveries to a farm. They went out in separate cars to see if Sierra had possibly wrecked her bike, or maybe even had been hit by a car or one of those trucks. At the time, that was the worst possibility that they could even imagine. They had no idea that the reality of the situation was much, much more serious. Now, let me just say this. Darkness out in the country is a different kind of dark. With no streetlights, city lights, or traffic, you can clearly see the millions of stars in the sky. And unless you have on your very strong high beams, the only light is from the moon. They didn't see any signs of Sierra or her bike, and only 30 minutes later, they decided to call and report her as missing. Word spread very quickly amongst the family, and soon the whole house was filled with family members calling every possible friend and hospital to see if anyone knew where Sierra was. Her Aunt Tara's worst fear was that she was injured in a ditch somewhere. Nothing else made sense at this point. While some police proceeded to search the dark roads, other officers stayed back at the house to talk to Sheila and talk to Josh to get as much information as possible.
I just saw around 7 o'clock you were with her.
6:43.
6:43.
What time did everybody start to look for
I think it was 10.
Josh, right? So you just met with her?
She just kind of showed up and said, "This is my workout." I'm like, "Okay." She just bought this bike. at a garage sale.
So he just rode his motorcycle with her.
Yeah.
They told the officers that it was extremely unlike Sierra to stay out past dark, and that she would have always called to let one of them know what she was doing. A 20-year-old not coming home after only 4 hours typically wouldn't have been a big deal to the police. But the fact that she was so close to her house and told Josh that she was going right home made the situation much more concerning. The police department took everything very seriously from the very beginning because it seemed most likely to everyone that Sierra could have been lying injured somewhere in the dark by herself. Josh showed officers the Snapchat videos that he had taken earlier during their ride so that they could see what her bike looked like, what she was wearing, which was a workout set with a yellow neon tank top and black shorts with a neon yellow side stripe going down the side of it. They also noticed that she was wearing a Fitbit band in the photo, and they hoped that they could find a way to track her with that or with her cell phone. Sierra's family home was located on County Road 6, and at around midnight, an officer who was driving the roads and shining at ditches with his spotlight came across an area on the side of the road that seemed a bit suspicious. There was a section of the uniform corn stalks that appeared to have been pushed down, so he pulled over to take a closer look. The pushed down corn made somewhat of a little path, and he walked through it with his flashlight. As he walked further into the cornfield, he started to smell a strong odor of gasoline, and on the ground, he found a little green fuse box, which would have come off some sort of vehicle. He decided to back out of the corn, and then he started shining his light around the side of the road. There he spotted a pair of men's sunglasses, and just by coincidence, while passing his flashlight over the area, the beam reflected off something shiny deeper in the cornfield. When he went to inspect what it was, he realized that it was Sierra's purple bike, and his light was shining off one of the reflectors. The bike was standing up using its kickstand, and it was obvious that it had been backed into the cornfield to purposefully conceal it, rather than just appearing there by accident. 5 hours after Sierra was last seen, the police believed that they were dealing with an abduction. When the situation became more than just a missing persons case, the FBI were immediately called to aid in the investigation. Which I just want to say, so many times we see small town police departments being too proud or too stubborn to ask other agencies for help. I think it's really admirable that the police in this situation realized almost immediately that they may benefit from the FBI's help, and they didn't waste any time. They made finding Sierra the priority, while some departments might have let their ego get in the way and want to work on the case alone to prove that they could do it themselves. Officers closed off County Road 6 to search for more clues, and when Sierra's family learned that her bike was found without her, they became overwhelmingly worried. Her whole family huddled in the living room to wait together for any more information and tried to be there for each other as best as they could. When the FBI arrived only a few hours later, they noticed that there was blood on the bike seat and on the handlebars. This led them to believe that whoever hid Sierra's bike had blood on their hands. As the sun started to come up around the same area of the cornfield, they discovered a green sock and a pair of women's sunglasses, both of which Josh identified as belonging to Sierra. Most terrifyingly, they also found an orange-handled screwdriver that was clearly covered in dried blood. There wasn't enough blood at the scene to make them think that anyone had died there, but it was clear that there was probably a struggle before Sierra was taken away. In the daylight, a crime scene investigator noticed a singular tire track, much thicker than a bicycle, and it was going down into the ditch up to the corn line. Hundreds of people in the town showed up at Evergreen High School to aid in the search for Sierra, and others went door to door passing out flyers with her photo on it. The investigators knew that with each passing hour, the likelihood of finding her alive became less and less, and the search has been described as frantic, organized chaos. Soon the entire community knew about Sierra's disappearance. A local woman came forward and said that at 7:30 p.m. the night Sierra went missing, she was driving down County Road 6, and she saw a bike on the side of the road, and what looked to be a man wearing red shorts crouched down a few rows back in the cornfield. She didn't think anything of it at the time and thought that maybe he had been riding the bike and pulled over to pee in the corn or something minor like that. Another citizen, a local farmer, called the police and asked if detectives could come by his house. When they got there, he told them that the day Sierra went missing, he and his son were driving their truck down County Road 6, and they saw a motorcycle helmet on the side of the road. He told his son to hop out and to get it, and then they threw it in the bed of the truck before making their way back home. He didn't know at the time that anyone was missing, or that this would be a significant piece of evidence. When the investigators got the helmet, they noticed that there was a red substance on the fabric inside the helmet, and also red fingerprints on the outside of the helmet, which appeared to be blood. The blood on the helmet, along with the single tire track at the scene, made detectives think that whoever did something to Sierra was more than likely on a motorcycle. Now, most of us know that in crime cases, the family and the significant other are almost always the initial suspects in any missing persons case. It also just so happened that Josh was the last person to have seen Sierra, and also drove a motorcycle. Sierra's family never had a single moment in their mind that Josh could have been involved in her disappearance, though. He loved Sierra, and her entire family loved him and had known him since he was a little boy. Regardless, investigators showed up to search Josh's home for any possible evidence, and he gave them access to anything that they asked for so that he could be immediately cleared and so that they could move on to finding the actual person responsible. He let them take DNA samples, they took the clothing he was wearing, they searched his room, his phone, every inch of his truck, and examined his motorcycle as well. Most importantly, he showed them that his helmet was at home, safe and sound. His parents and friend he was with that day were able to say definitively that he was at home right after he parted ways with Sierra. Josh was already going through mental anguish, not knowing if the love of his life was okay, and after investigating his home and his alibi, he was quickly cleared. Even though the questioning and suspicion hurt him, he knew that it was a vital step in their investigation.
I would never, ever hurt her, or anybody for that matter. Part of me was angry, but they were very adamant about telling me that they need to rule me out. Being the last one to see her, I can see where a lot of people's thoughts can go.
At that point, Sierra had been missing for 36 hours. Staring at the vast fields and row after row of corn became overwhelming. It was difficult to know where to even start, and it felt like literally searching for a needle in a haystack. While some continued searching on foot, some were in helicopters, and even others were using drones. Other investigators decided to take a more strategic approach to this. Time was not on their side, and in an attempt to move things along more quickly, they tried to determine who in the area would be most likely to be involved. So they started by gathering a list of the local offenders on the registry and violent offenders in the area, and they decided to question them to narrow down their potential suspect pool. One of these individuals, who lived only a few miles from where Sierra's bike was found, was a man named James Worley. After briefly looking into his background, they were shocked by the similarities between his past criminal history and the situation that they were currently in with Sierra. 57-year-old James Worley was born on April 8, 1959 in Tacoma, Washington. He was born to parents James Sr. and Florence Worley. He was the middle child of the family, with one older sister named Cynthia and a younger brother named Mark. James Sr. was said to be an alcoholic who regularly physically harmed his wife, Florence. The children witnessed their father ripping their phone out from the wall when their mom would try to call for help. They witnessed him slapping her, pushing her around, and even chasing her through the house with a butcher knife on one occasion. When James was 5 years old, his parents got divorced, and Florence got full custody of the 3 children. She later remarried a military veteran named Jack Shepard, who was said to be very serious and very strict. James's sister, Cynthia, also claimed that Jack had attacked her in a sexual way on at least one occasion. The family moved from Washington to Illinois and then settled permanently in Ohio. James was said to be a hyperactive child who really craved his mother's attention, especially after his little brother Mark was born. In school, he was very social, chatty, and even a little mischievous, but he was said to be one of those kids who was kind of awkward. And I mean that in that he said things out loud that others may have chosen to keep to themselves. He was said to not really pay attention in class and only had a grade point average of 1.5 and an IQ of 97. However, his family believed that this was because he just didn't care about school and he didn't try very hard. But regardless, he graduated from Evergreen High School, the same school that Sierah and Josh attended. In the 80s, James's friends described him as a very eccentric and wild guy who always acted younger than his age and even a little immature. He partied a lot and heavily smoked Mary Jane all of his adult life. Other than one serious incident that occurred in 1990, the only other criminal history he had was related to growing or possessing marijuana. But here's where the similarities come into play. On the 4th of July in 1990, a 26-year-old woman named Robin Gardner was riding her bike about a mile away from her home. She heard a truck approach behind her, and she moved to the side of the road to let the truck pass. When it didn't, she tried to speed up, but the truck ended up rear-ending her back tire, which launched Robin over the handlebars of her bike and down into a ditch. The man driving the truck was James Worley, and he quickly got out of the truck and ran down the ditch asking if she was okay. She stood up and said that she was okay, but when she turned for a second to look for her bike, James struck her in the back of the head with a hammer. He grabbed her in a chokehold and put a screwdriver up to her throat and said if she didn't get in the truck, he would kill her. He pushed Robin up into the passenger side of his truck, and then he slapped a handcuff on her right wrist and attempted to grab her left arm and put it behind her back. Robin held onto the steering wheel with her left hand, trying with everything she had not to let him get her hands behind her back. She said she was screaming bloody murder, but there was no one else on this desolate country road. And then right as she was about to lose grip of the steering wheel, she heard a motorcycle approaching from the distance. James heard the motorcycle coming, and he looked up, causing 1 second of distraction for Robin to yank her wrist away. She practically flew over the front seats and out the driver's side door and then ran frantically toward the motorcyclist, screaming for help. Thank God the motorcyclist was a good Samaritan, and he let her jump on the back of his bike and then drove her away so that he could figure out what was going on. He thought that maybe there had been a domestic dispute, and Robin directed him the short way to her house. And when they got there, she told the driver and her mom what had just taken place. Robin's mom called the police, and the motorcyclist raced back to the scene, hoping that James would still be there so he could make sure that he was arrested. Surprisingly, when he arrived back at the scene, James was still there, just waiting, and police quickly showed up as well. James told the police that Robin had been riding her bike erratically in the road, and he tried to get around her, but that he couldn't avoid hitting her due to the way she was riding her bike. He said that when he went to check on her in the ditch, she was hysterical and tried to get away. He said he didn't want her to leave the scene of an accident and wanted to make sure that she was okay. So he tried to handcuff her to the steering wheel so that he could leave her there and go get help. Which, okay, yeah, right. I'm sorry, as a good Samaritan trying to make sure that she's okay if she's hysterical, handcuffing her to the steering wheel, it ain't making sense. The math ain't mathin'. Nothing makes sense. You're a big dirty liar in my opinion. So Robin was taken to the hospital and had a skull fracture and a concussion because remember, he had hit her in the head with a hammer. Literally nobody believed James's version of events, and a jury found him guilty of attempted kidnapping and assault, and he was sentenced to 6 to 10 years in prison. However, due to good behavior, he was let out after only 3 years. So you can see how the incident with Robin might have given investigators a little bit of deja vu about what was going on with Sierah. You also have the screwdriver that was found at Sierra's scene, and in Robin's case, he held that screwdriver to her neck as a weapon, threatening her that he would kill her if she were to scream. James's full-time residence always remained his childhood home, and he returned there after his short time in prison. He had a small mechanic shop that he ran in one of the structures on the property, but he also received government disability. He took care of his mom as she got older, but to people outside of the family, their relationship has been described as codependent, awkward, and even dysfunctional. One of James's longtime friends said that he would visit once or twice a month, and the two of them would smoke a lot of weed together in the barn or the trailer on the property, and then just watch explicit videos together. Him and his mom, which is just seriously so gross and so weird. Ew. Over the years, he got into darker and more violent adult X-rated videos. It's just really odd that there seems to be a correlation between men who are strangely close with their mothers and ones with dark sexual fantasies who do bad things to women, like a Norman Bates Motel situation. I don't know if you've ever seen that series or if you're familiar with that story. It's a great series. Go watch it. It's also very gross. Now, it may have been an indication of a mental health issue, which did run in their family. James's younger brother was diagnosed with schizophrenia, but at that point in 2016, James had not gotten any mental health assistance or diagnosis, other than a few mandatory counseling sessions after his first prison sentence. When detectives arrived at James's house early in the day on July 21st, he was unusually defensive as soon as he opened the door.
Who are you?
Yeah, we work on that violent crime task force.
Okay. So,
And I'm with the state.
okay. So you guys got some suspicions for something here.
Yep.
And you're not here for any particular reason.
There's a young lady missing.
I'm not out there killing chicks, dude. I don't have relationships. I mean, I'm trying to get one started online a little bit right now. But, and she's been out here. And guess what? She went home alive.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody in the house but your mother?
Just my mom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any reason why we couldn't go in and look?
What part of the house do you want to look at?
We'd like to look through the whole house.
He reluctantly let them in to look around the house on the 3-acre property.
Let's get out of here.
And this is my room here. Okay? No dead bodies.
The laundry room, good luck.
I'm sorry about the mess. This is how it ends up when you're doing everything by yourself.
Yeah.
There's nothing in here. Come on, you got another section over here you can look at.
Well, I'm a get it done kind of guy, and I want to get you guys out of my hair.
Well, we're doing good so far.
Other than a bunch of clutter, they didn't find any sign of Sierah. When interviewing James, he strangely offered up the information that on July 19th, he had been riding his motorcycle on County Road 6. He said his bike stalled out and he pulled it over to the side of the road to see if he could fix whatever was going on with it. He said that where he broke down, slightly down the road, he saw 2 bikes laying on the side in a ditch. When he wasn't able to fix his motorcycle, he went up and picked up one of the bikes and thought about riding it home, but that he apparently changed his mind and put it back. He said that he pushed his bike through the corn and ended up losing his helmet, screwdriver, fuse box, and some sunglasses on the way back, which you'd think you would notice if you lost something as big as a helmet, but okay, buddy, you're trying to work your alibi out. I can appreciate the story. I can appreciate the tall tale. But the agents, of course, found it very peculiar that someone would put themselves at the scene of a crime willingly, but I guess he wouldn't have had any other way of explaining why else all of his stuff was found there. They asked what he did after he got home, and he said that he just stayed in for the rest of the night. When they told him that his helmet was found at the scene that they were searching, he actually asked if he could have it back. During their conversation, agents noticed that James had scratches on his arms and bruises on his legs. At the same time, other agents were working on getting a search warrant for a more extensive search of the property. When they took a closer look in the barn, what they found was beyond anything that they could have expected. Inside the barn on the Worley property, there were bales and bales of neatly stacked hay. The configuration of the hay almost resembled a 4-poster bed, but the area where a mattress would go was completely empty. There was a large piece of plywood leaning up against the wall, and when they moved the wood, they found a partially deflated air mattress. The door of the barn was painted black on the inside, and the more they looked, the more odd and disturbing discoveries they made. At the foot of the hay-made bed frame, there was a 6-foot-long green crate, almost like where a footstool or a bench would go in front of an actual bed. Inside the crate, investigators found bondage gear, leather eye masks, dozens of Ziploc baggies full of lingerie, tube tops, underwear, stockings, booty shorts, skimpy dresses, all individually labeled. Most of the items appeared to have been new, but horrifyingly, one pair of purple underwear had stains inside that resembled blood. Of course, their minds instantly thought the worst. In other various areas in the barn, there was duct tape, a nanny cam, rubber gloves, adult diapers, a blanket, socks, shovels, paper towels, a straw, knives, firearms, and ammunition. I mean, you are talking like a full, disgusting bunker for a creep to execute and inflict his most disgusting, sick, twisted fantasies. You have the weapons, you have the bondage, you have some of the cleanup supplies. It is so disgusting and grotesque. You also have adult diapers, which at first I was like, how do the adult diapers fit into it? But then I started thinking, if you're holding somebody hostage or captive, an adult diaper can go on them easily for when they have to relieve themselves so that you don't have to clean up the mess. Or was it for his aging mother? For him? I mean, some of the items that were discovered are obviously just like weird. The investigators noticed that on the floor in the middle of the hay bales appeared to be another piece of plywood, this one with holes cut into it. Before they moved it, they hoped and prayed that they would lift it up and find Sierra in there alive, scared but not hurt. However, that wouldn't be the case. Sierra wasn't there at all, but something almost just as sinister and creepy was found. Under the plywood, submerged into the ground, was a small freezer. The freezer had a strap on it, like something that you would expect to keep it from opening, like a tie-down strap. When they opened the freezer, they were hit in the face with the overwhelming aroma of bleach. Inside the freezer was lined with dirty carpet. When they asked James, hi, why the heck do you have a freezer buried in the ground in your barn with carpet on the inside? He said that he stores marijuana in there, and he does that to keep it hidden. But the evidence that they already had found, and would continue to find, painted a very different picture of what was going on inside that barn. Next, they turned their focus to the two vehicles on the property. In both trucks, they found zip ties, gloves, handcuffs, rope, tape, and ski masks. It was like a kidnapper's little go-to kit. Without even having DNA results from the items back, the police had enough to arrest James for the abduction of Sierra. But they still didn't have an answer to their main question: where was she? At the station, James seemed to have an answer for everything that they asked him about. He explained that he was planning on starting his own adult film production company, which explained all of the lingerie, the bondage gear, and the setup in the barn.
This is gonna be a studio.
It's porn. What make
Be a
producer here?
Okay.
Pornography.
Stuff, right?
He also said that he would sometimes take baggies of the lingerie and clothes out with him and give them as presents to women.
That stuff's all been bought new during the last year and a half. What's all the undergarments for? What's all the what? That's all girlfriend stuff. What is wrong with it?
Nothing?
You give it out?
Yeah, when I go out with people. What's wrong with getting stuff to treat girls? They like that. Hey, listen.
That's.
Don't make it you're going to try to take this and build some thing up the ladder.
He's saying he felt strange about it.
That's
Stand.
the way it is, and I don't have a voice in it, and nobody wants to listen to us.
What a sicko. I don't know about you, but I would be highly disturbed if a random man offered me a Ziploc baggie of underwear as a gift. Like, it's almost comical when you think about his explanation. It is just so bizarre. Even though they felt confident that they had their perpetrator, without a body, there was still a shred of hope that Sierra could have been found alive. Her family was absolutely shocked that someone who lived so close to them could have been the one to have taken her. But since there was no obvious sign that a murder had taken place, they thought that maybe he took her to another location and that she was just waiting to be found, holding out hope. Unfortunately, James was playing dumb and not providing any helpful information.
Hey, listen. I've never hurt anyone, killed anyone. I want to find her alive. Dude, I do not have her stashed, hidden, buried, whatever it is you're thinking. I haven't done it, don't know, I have no answers. I'm just not the guy. If I was going to attack a chick, and I've been around the block Would I leave any evidence whatsoever to be found?
The detectives still focused on the possibility of her being somewhere else hidden on the property. They went through the attic, they removed insulation, they drained the pond, and they brought in cadaver dogs to go over every single inch of the property. But they still didn't find Sierah. The next day, they got a call from a nearby farmer who had been walking through his cornfield to try to help with the search. He had come across an area of disturbed dirt that he didn't recognize, and the investigators raced to go and check it out. There were corn stalks pushed down and a mound of dirt that to them resembled a grave. They used shovels to dig up the loose dirt, preparing for the worst. But to their surprise, the hole was shallow and it was empty. Completely baffled by this random, intentionally dug grave, they decided to do a more extensive search of the same cornfield, just in case there were any other areas that they couldn't see. They had a helicopter fly overhead and they brought in cadaver dogs to begin sniffing through the field. Not long after that, an officer and his canine followed a few feet of what appeared to be drag markers in the dirt, and they came upon an area with another mound about 200 yards away from the first. The dog alerted for the presence of a body. Floodlights were then brought into the field so that crime scene investigators could examine the area. They used shovels at first, being more and more careful the deeper in the hole that they got, until finally they made a heartbreaking discovery. At the bottom of the hole, they found a woman's body, who they recognized to be Sierah Joughin. Unfortunately, it was too late. When the phone rang at Sierra's grandparents' home, the entire family, who had stayed together for days, was hopeful that they'd get news about finding her, or at least another clue. Her stepdad Matt answered the phone, and when he walked back in the room, he didn't have to say a word. His face said it all. Sierra's Aunt Tara recalls that the sound of their entire family wailing, screaming, and her mother absolutely in physical pain from the news was the worst and most traumatizing sound that she has ever heard. The crime scene investigators began carefully trying to remove Sierra from the hole, while preserving as much evidence as possible. Once they found her, they used gloved hands and even paintbrushes to just delicately remove the dirt from this sweet and beautiful 20-year-old girl. Finding her where they did was horrifying enough, but the condition she was in made things even worse. Sierra was laying on her stomach with her head turned to the side, and there was straw or hay in her hair. Her hands were behind her back, bound with handcuffs, and a piece of rope attached her wrists to her ankles, which were bound with duct tape. And the position that she was in and bound in was known as a hogtie position. She was wearing only a lace bandeau and an adult diaper. In her mouth was a large yellow rubber dog toy, kept in tightly with a rope around her head.
Authorities searching an area around County Road 7 tragically found what we believe to be Sierra's remains.
And that is where we begin tonight. 20-year-old Sierah Joughin went missing Tuesday night during a bike ride. Tonight, police discover her remains, and we have team coverage, starting with Senna Ora, who's at the command center at Evergreen High School. Senna?
Well, Bill, the mobile command center here at the high school is now gone, but the sheriff says the investigation is still ongoing. They do have crews out canvassing the area, including the suspect's home and barn, for more evidence. Right now, the victim's body is at the Lucas County Coroner's Office for an autopsy. And although they haven't positively ID'd the victim, authorities strongly believe it is Sierra. The Fulton County Sheriff says authorities located the body in an area around County Road 7 Friday night.
Positive identification will be made through either fingerprints or DNA, but at this time, we strongly believe that this is Sierra.
Local, state, and federal investigators searched the grounds and ponds in that area, including the nearby home and barn of the suspect, James Worley, who is currently charged with abduction. Additional charges against Worley are pending.
I want to express my heartfelt condolences to Sarah's family. At this time, our investigation will remain ongoing, but we do anticipate additional charges against the suspect.
20-year-old Sierah Joughin of Metamora was a junior at the University of Toledo. She was last spotted riding back home alone on County Road 6 after parting ways with her boyfriend. Her bike was found in a cornfield off County Road 6.
Law enforcement has been professional
and unswerving in their efforts.
A family spokesperson thanked volunteers and authorities for their help and is asking the public for privacy during this horrific time.
Sierra was a remarkable young lady with a contagious smile. She was a loving person who has touched many people in her life. We miss her, and we will always love her.
After her autopsy, the medical examiner determined that the dog toy was so large that the amount of force it took to shove it that deep in her mouth caused some of her teeth to break, and it cut off her airway completely, leading to asphyxiation. She had a significant wound on the right side of her head, a hairline fracture on her skull and her left orbital bone, and several contusions on her left leg. Although her body did not appear to have been taken advantage of in a sexual or savage way, the entire scenario was clearly played out sexually in nature. There were rubber gloves found in the hole as well, and outside of the hole, they found human feces, which is seriously just freaking disgusting. Like one last little F you after he just buried her. James Worley was indicted by a grand jury on 19 counts, including 2 counts of abduction, 4 counts of kidnapping, 2 counts of felonious assault, 2 counts of murder, and 2 counts of aggravated murder with death penalty specifications, 2 counts of aggravated robbery, 1 count of possessing criminal tools, and 1 count of gross abuse of a corpse, 1 count of tampering with evidence, and 2 counts of having weapons while under disability. He pled not guilty to all of those charges. The prosecution worked rapidly to build their case against James Worley, and 2 years later, in March of 2018, they presented their evidence in trial. The prosecution stated that Sierra's DNA was found on the helmet that belonged to James. When the medical examiner testified, she stated that she believed that the contusions on Sierra's leg and the wound to the side of her head could have been caused by Sierra hitting the road, and that the skull fracture and orbital bone fracture was more consistent to a wound after being hit with an object like a helmet. As though he did the same thing he did to Robin, hit her on the bike, she flew off, she injured herself on the road, and then instead of a hammer, he used his helmet this time to whack her to subdue her. The medical examiner said that the dog toy that was used to asphyxiate her would have taken nearly 10 minutes, and that she would have audibly and physically been struggling to breathe during that time. More DNA was presented at the trial, and the glove found at the burial site had a mixture of Sierra and James's DNA. The blood in the purple underwear found at the Worley home was a match for Sierra, and her DNA was also on a paper towel, the air mattress, duct tape, and other items in that green crate. The prosecution showed that there were several packs of those adult diapers that matched the ones Sierra was found to be wearing. There was semen matching James's DNA on a blanket located inside the barn, and after they seized his computers, they found that the same day Sierra went missing, he was watching hours of violent adult content and searched the words like hogtie, bound, beaten down teens, forced teens, rough pickup, and strangling, and he had paid for the sites using his mother's checking account. He also shopped online for wholesale lingerie. Cell phone data was presented to show that Sierra's phone and James's phone pinged in the same area at the same time on 2 different occasions the night that she went missing. There was also a key found on James's keychain that matched the key found attached to the handcuffs on Sierra's wrists. It was also discovered that after James's motorcycle broke down, he called his brother to come pick him up, and he got a ride back to their mother's house. This refuted James's claim that he walked the bike back by himself. There was surveillance footage captured from one of the Evergreen High School security cameras, which captured a motorcycle passing by during the time frame that Sierra went missing, and later in the evening, a vehicle resembling James's truck arriving back to the area. While the mountain of evidence against James seemed insurmountable, the defense had several issues with some of the evidence that they presented. For example, there was DNA found and collected from under Sierra's fingernails during her autopsy, but the DNA came back belonging to an unknown male. James, Josh, her dad, grandparents, stepdad, and any other male family members on both sides were ruled out. They also argued that James couldn't have dug those holes by himself in the hard Ohio clay during the time frame before she was found. They said that he must have had help. Also, that woman who saw a man on the side of the road near a bike that day said that he was wearing red shorts, and after extensively searching James's home, they were unable to find any red shorts. The woman also wasn't able to definitively say if the man she saw on the side of the road was James or not. They said these factors create reasonable doubt and should lead to a not guilty verdict, or at least take the death penalty off the table in case another person was involved. The last witness for the prosecution was Robin Gardner, that woman that James attempted to kidnap in the 90s. Her story showed that he had a pattern of behavior and a calculated way of abducting women. Court documents also stated that when James was released after his first abduction attempt, he was required to see a counselor. He apparently told this counselor that he had learned from his mistakes with Robin and would definitely bury the next girl. But yeah, go ahead and let this guy out for good behavior, because that sounds like a good idea, you morons. The defense had a doctor evaluate James to help paint a picture of a mentally unstable man who had a hard life, and the doctor testified that he diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder, marijuana dependence, depression, paranoia, and narcissistic personality disorder. During their closing, the prosecution told the jury their theory of what happened the evening Sierra went missing. They said that after Josh and Sierra parted ways, James saw her riding her bike alone while he was traveling on his motorcycle. They said that they believe he either drove ahead of her, pulled to the side of the road, and hid in the corn waiting for her to pass by so that he could jump out and strike her with his helmet, or that he rear-ended the back tire of her bike just like he did to Robin years ago, which then sent her flying into the road, causing her head to hit on the pavement, and then he attacked her with his helmet. If he did hit her with his motorcycle, that might explain why his fuse box fell out onto the side of the road. He then tied up her legs and put handcuffs on her wrists and taped her mouth shut, if she was even conscious at that point, and then drug her into that cornfield to conceal her and her bike from the side of the road. He then called his brother Mark to come and pick him up in the truck, loaded his motorcycle up in the bed of the truck, and went home like nothing ever happened. After his brother took him home, he waited for a while before getting in his other truck and going back to that cornfield to retrieve Sierra. I can't imagine what must have been going through her mind while laying there alone in the field, unable to move, unable to scream. Again, if she was even conscious, which let's just pray that she wasn't, so that she wasn't scared to death this whole time. And then we also know that just a few hours later, so many people were looking for her. But by then, she was already in James' hillbilly torture chamber. When he got her back to that disgusting barn, he took off her clothes and redressed her in some of his lingerie and put her in that adult diaper, probably just to degrade her even more. Even though the medical examiner said that she wasn't attacked in a sexual way in the violent sense that you might expect, the fact is he was wearing gloves. He had doused everything in bleach, he had toys, and so many other items that he could have used that wouldn't necessarily have shown a violent attack. The fact that his semen was found on a blanket kind of indicates that he got off from the whole situation one way or another. And the prosecution believes that the reason he used the dog toy to suffocate her was so that he could watch her die slowly. The defense tried two different tactics to sway the jury. The first being that James didn't come into contact with Sierra at all, and that some other random killer who knew where all of his freakish torture supplies were located just happened to take her to his barn and made it seem like he was the one who did it and framed him. The second tactic was that even if he did come into contact with Sierra, he didn't do it alone, and therefore should not receive the death penalty. The jury saw through all of the excuses, the unlikely scenarios, and saw James for who he really was, a depraved monster. On March 26, 2018, the jury found James Worley guilty on all counts, and they recommended that he be sentenced to death for the murder of Sierah Joughin. The final sentencing took place on April 16th, and before the judge handed down his ruling, James delivered a very inappropriate, disrespectful, and honestly psychotic 45-minute speech, primarily addressing Sierra's family.
As you know, my helmet was found at the location of where she was attacked. Everyone involved in this case, from the prosecutor to my defense team to me as a person, has a theory or an idea of what may or may not have happened. And if you talk to the prosecution, they say, well, Sierra died in Mr. Worley's house. If you talk to my legal team, they firmly believe that she was killed where she was attacked, near her home. If you ask me, I believe she died up on Road 7. So take your pick. No one really knows, and no one knows exactly when she died. Which, I mean, I can't hardly wrap my head around that. That is something that you think they would be able to figure out. Some things weren't done during this case that could have been done. In Sierra's case, unfortunately, she was buried for a period of time, short or long, no one knows. And that DNA survived, and it survived because it was deep under her fingernails. She clawed the guy who attacked her. It's a no-brainer. Mary Hyde saw the guy by the blue post in red shorts. One knee. It's a no-brainer. On top of it, I didn't know about this until right after the finger thing came up with the DNA. They find the human turd down the road where the killer tried to dig his first hole. Apparently had to go to the bathroom. That would have been DNA rich. And I might have gone to Evergreen High School and I might have got a 1.59 grade point average back in the day. But I'll tell you, anybody here with common sense, that goes to the family family. Yes, I do. Why would I know? How that's DNA rich? That would have been tested, collected, and tested. It would have come back with the same DNA under her fingernails. I put my name and address, James Worley, 6 and L, Brown Barnes, and my phone number in the helmet. So whoever found it, I was hoping a good soul, instead of just finding a helmet and keeping it, would bring it back to me. Because I tend to lose it. With that guy, Tom Print Man, the one in the field where the bike was, would have known where I lived. And during the 2-3 days he had Sierra, I believe she was walked, literally kept under subdued and kept under control. Don't ask me why she wasn't drinking. She was a beautiful girl, but she wasn't, and I'm glad. The bottom line is, the person who did this walked her, and I have a feeling that he stopped at more than just my house during this journey that he had.
Wait just a moment. You can continue, Mr. Worley.
The family isn't taking this well, and I can understand. I get it. I am not the person that I've been painted to be, and I'm not guilty of Sierra's death. And I'm looking, that's the truth. And I know people at that bench over there want to believe or do believe that I'm the person. But it's also their job to try to make me that guy if they think they have a case. If there would have been an identification on this, if that human feces would have been collected and processed, and it would have been the same DNA, That would have definitely changed the narrative of something to think about. There's a grave just down the ways of this feces, but we'll never know now because the family was collected and to families. And that's not my fault. How does the DNA explain that away? How do you explain Mary Heights' eyewitness account of the guy on the bicycle where the bike was from? Just wash it away, leave it on James Worley. And how does the blood get into my building? Did anyone ever think that maybe instead of being on the day that this happened, the police all had their blinders wide open looking for everything? As soon as they came on a little evidence at my place, it narrowed strictly to me. And I didn't think anything else was ever looked at. No one ever considered that maybe I was a crime victim myself, that someone broke into my building. And I can tell you when it happened, at least in my opinion, when I fully expect this to happen. There's only one thing strange on my property that I know. She disappeared on Tuesday. Wednesday things, by the way, I'm counting. I'm doing the elder care. There are state people coming in. Wednesday, I had customers at my house. And then to go into the grave. These things all take time and effort. I would have been missed. That doesn't indicate in the real much. What I want you to understand is during the time this person had, they walked, moved, how you think it, my truck came back completely negative. Clean. No fingerprints, no DNA, no blood, no nothing. I didn't call anybody or call her. She was wrong. This goes against the grain of the prosecution. This goes against the grain of what people have been told is happening. And I'm telling you, how could a man have it? He pooped in the field. We got saw by Mary Heights. This DNA is number 13. I hope the FBI is putting him in the code system, and if he ever gets swallowed, that he gets popped up. And I'll bet you they connect him to more than just one crime.
The judge told James that he should have just kept all of that to himself, and it definitely didn't help his case at all, or people's opinion of him. The judge then read his decision.
After weighing all the appropriate evidence, all mitigating factors, statement of counsel, and the statutory and case law required is the decision of this court that the specific aggravating circumstance in count 12 involving the aggravated murder of Sierah Joughin outweighs any and all mitigating factors beyond a reasonable doubt. The court therefore accepts the recommendation of the jury. The court orders that James D. Worley is hereby sentenced to death for the aggravated murder of Sierah Joughin. The court orders that the execution date of James D. Worley be set for June 3, 2019 to be carried out by the appropriate authorities. The execution date shall be subject to further order by a court of competent jurisdiction. Defendant James D. Worley shall be remanded to the appropriate Ohio prison institution to be held on death row pending his execution. Suffice it to say, Mr. Worley, I think you would have been well advised to listen to your attorneys before you made your statement. I thought your attorneys did an excellent job in handling your defense. And one further comment, Mr. Worley, if I thought there was a snowball's chance in hell that you were innocent, you'd be looking at life. Court's in recess.
James Worley's execution date was set for June 3rd, 2019, but we of course know that the appeals process pushes those dates back, sometimes indefinitely. His defense worked on appeals all the way up until 2021, but all of them were denied, and his new execution date is currently set for May 20th, 2025. I really hope that that date sticks, because his cocky ass even said in an interview that the appeals process will probably last his entire life, so he doesn't think that he'll ever actually receive his punishment and be executed.
Here's my thing. You will be killed. Okay, you're going to be killed.
I will be killed.
Yeah, you have a death sentence in 2025. Okay, so let me just say
I
this.
doubt if that happens.
Okay, but maybe you can stop that. You're running out of appeals. If you get
that process will outlast my life.
Maybe if you give the name of someone who helped you.
There was no one that helped me because I'm not involved in it.
It is just an incredibly sad and senseless story of what happened to Sierra. What do you guys think about this case? I 100% believe that James is responsible for everything that took place. But what do you make of that unknown male DNA under her fingernails? Do you think it's possible that he had help? Or do you think that there is another explanation for how it got there? Did his brother who picked him up help him, and was he more involved than initially stated? I'm also curious how they determined her day of death as July 23rd, 2016, when she went missing on the 19th. Did they just do that because they weren't exactly sure when she died? Or was there evidence that she was kept alive for more than just one day? I'm really not sure, but I hope that she didn't have to spend more than just a couple of minutes or hours with that evil pervert. Disgusting. After James was put away, many people started to wonder if he could have possibly been responsible for any other missing or murdered women in the area. It seemed very unlikely that he committed one offense in 1990 and then just stayed on the straight and narrow until 2016. They felt like it was possible that he committed or attempted at least one other offense in between. And in 1996, James was 37 years old and back out on the streets after only spending 3 years in jail for his attempted kidnapping of Robin Gardner. That same year, a 24-year-old sex worker named Claudia Tinsley crossed paths with James. They met at a festival, and Claudia decided to leave with James in his van. They hung out and drove around for a while and stopped at a couple of places. They then drove to her mother's house so that she could pick up a change of clothes, and Claudia's mom supposedly got a very bad feeling about him and asked her not to go. Claudia thought she was just being paranoid, but her mom took down James's license plate anyway, just in case. Claudia's mom's intuition ended up being correct, and that was the last time that anyone ever saw her. After she didn't come home for a couple of days, she reported Claudia missing and gave them the suspicious man's license plate number. They brought James in for questioning, and he told them that they had a consensual sexual encounter, but that he never saw her again after that. They executed a search warrant of his home, that same home that Sierra was killed in years later, but they didn't find any evidence of Claudia. However, to this day, many people believe he had something to do with her disappearance, and unfortunately, her mother died of cancer in 2018, never knowing what happened to her daughter. In 2022, a journalist did an interview with James to see if she could get any information about other crimes that he may have committed, but to this day, he claims to have had nothing to do with Claudia's disappearance or Sierra's death, and says that the incident with Robin was just a big misunderstanding.
What are the chances? Remember, we talked about
Melissa.
Just let me have this, because if we do post this, people will have these exact questions. So I just want to pose those to you, because these are the questions that the people that you want to question it will have. So we talked about what are the chances that people will say that.
This sounds more like a casino. What are the chances? What are the chances?
No, I'm just saying, don't you think it's a little unusual to ask someone to believe that your helmet fell off? Someone, a killer of all people, came down the county road, found a victim, hit her with it, and then another guy came by and found the helmet, and that this kidnapping would be so similar to one that you were convicted of 30 years ago. That's another crazy similarity.
It is not even close to what happened in 1990, okay? And you're taking me down a
two girls were on bicycles that were knocked off their bicycles and then restrained.
Was he comes off in this piece composed. I mean, was he?
Not so much. I think that he fully expected, and I kind of went along with his idea that we were going to go there to talk about his manifesto. And really, I had organized questions with Sierra's family that they wanted answered. And then once I saw that piece in his papers about Claudia Tinsley, I knew for a fact that I was going to ask about those other women.
Yeah, and then when you walk away from this, I mean, there were things that we talked about when we did something online, and I said, why you? Why you of all people?
It's surprising because I am very involved with the Justice for Sierra organization. I can't answer that question. I don't know, but I know that he called the interview horrific and he was not happy with it.
Josh struggled with immense sadness and grief for several years after losing Sierra. Despite the pain, he never gave up hope for a brighter future. He has since become a paramedic and eventually found love again with a sweet woman named Shelby. Together, they embarked on a new chapter of their lives and got married in August 2021. While Sierra's family wishes more than anything that the outcome would have been different, they are thankful that they were able to bring Sierra home and lay her to rest so that they didn't have to spend another day of agony not knowing where she was or if she was scared or in pain. They are also satisfied with the justice that they received for her in court, and that James will pay the ultimate punishment for what he did to her. After the trial, Sierra's family filed a wrongful death suit against James, and they did this in order to attain his estate as compensation. They did this for the sole purpose of tearing down every single remnant of his sick life and the place that he stole Sierra's life. The abduction and murder of Sierra had a very profound effect on the small community of Metamora and the county of Fulton as a whole. An entire town where people weren't afraid to leave their doors unlocked and trusted their neighbors, realized in the worst possible way that their sense of safety was just an illusion. However, even through unimaginable heartbreak and grief, Sierra's loved ones were able to turn this tragedy into change for Ohio. Josh started a nonprofit called Keep Our Girls Safe, which offers free self-defense classes and focuses on women's safety. They organize a yearly motorcycle ride benefit to fund their mission of keeping women safe. Sierra's Aunt Tara started a nonprofit called Justice for Sierra, whose mission is to empower youth by establishing self-awareness and self-defense. They developed a school curriculum called the Sierra Strong Program, which has specific safety and self-defense courses that are implemented during PE classes. Their initial goal was to pass a law to develop a database accessible to law enforcement and everyday citizens to find out where violent offenders live in their communities. The Ohio law was passed in December of 2018, and they are working toward passing similar laws in all 50 states. Josh and Sierra's family can now move forward in happiness and peace, knowing that they can help the community in her honor, which is what she would have wanted. This was a long one today, guys, so I appreciate you sticking with me through it. It is just such a brutal, senseless crime, like I said, and I really do want to understand James's motivation. While clearly it was sexual gratification, whether he assaulted her or not, I'm just still having a hard time wrapping my mind around all of the nuances. I guess it's fetish driven. I don't know. But it's just one of those things where it's like there's so many different sick and depraved nuances that I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around it. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, as a reminder, my podcast Serialously is officially launched and live, and we go over true crime cases over there, similarly to the way we do here on 10 to Life, same format, same kind of content, everything. But there is one stark difference. Everything is uncensored. So it's a little bit more explicit, uncensored, not in a grotesque sort of way, but as many of you, I'm sure know, YouTube censors the heck out of almost every single word. You can't even say the term child, A-B-U-S-E, on YouTube without getting flagged. So we're able to share these stories on the podcast in an uncensored way because they don't flag any words and you can say basically whatever you want, which personally to me just feels so important because with the seriousness and heaviness of these cases, I feel like you do a disservice to the victim and the voices that you're trying to get justice for when you have to constantly water down what they experienced and what they went through and censor these words. It almost becomes not comedic in a way, but just kind of like, are you serious? These are all legal terms. They should be able to be said without consequence. And this is what these victims went through. But for some reason or another, we can't do that over here. So if you want to give it a try, test it out, see if it's for you. If it's not, that's totally okay. Head on over to whatever podcast app you use and you can listen. It is called Serialously, and I will put the thumbnail right here, the image of it, so you can find it quickly. But again, it is very similar in terms of format to the content here on 10 to Life. It's just uncensored. So take a look, check it out, and as always, I appreciate your support with all of my endeavors. All right, guys, let me know what you think about this case in the comments below, and I will talk with you very soon. Until the next case, stay safe.